When I took over my father's post as ranger at Black Hollow Lake, I thought I was doing the family a favor. A few months of service, maybe a year max, then back to my real life in Boise, back to traffic, coffee shops, people who don't vanish without a sound. My father, Raymond Whitaker, had worked this park for most of his life, and his father before him. It was supposed to be some honorable legacy. Locals in Dry Creek used to call us the guardians of the hollow. A proud line of park rangers keeping the trails clear and the tourists safe. But what no one told me, not even Dad, was what we were really guarding. Black Hollow Lake isn't well known, even in Oregon. It's not on GPS apps. You won't find any Instagram tags or glamping influencers here. The lake sits deep in protected forest land, flanked by sharp ridge lines and long-forgotten logging trails. It's as if the map itself refuses to remember this place. When I was a kid, I hated it here. Dad brought me every summer, weeks at a time. While my friends were playing baseball and going to summer camp, I was learning how to siphon fuel, clean rifle barrels, and patch leaky canoe seams. He always called it preparation. I thought it was just survivalist nonsense, but now I realize he was trying to teach me how to stay alive. I arrived on October 13th. The forest was already turning amber, gold, and rust red bleeding across the trees. The air had that early bite of winter, and the lake looked like polished obsidian from the overlook. Still, too still. When I got to the ranger cabin, the place was untouched, his boots still by the door, the mug still sitting in the sink, the logs on the desk, marked in his careful block letter handwriting, but taped to the inside of the front door yellowed. Curling at the corners was a single piece of paper. No greeting, no context, just 7 words. Don't let it leave the lake. I tried to laugh it off, assumed it was metaphorical, some Forest Service inside joke, a note to himself during one of his late-night whiskey spirals. But that first week, things started to happen, small things. The old man of the lake was the first. It's a log, just a vertical piece of old driftwood, floating upright in the water. It's been there longer than anyone can remember, slowly rotating in place. My grandfather called it the Sentinel. My dad never spoke about it directly, but I remember him watching it sometimes. Long stares from the dock, like he was waiting for something. On day 5, I met Kelsey Moran, college student from Spokane. Bright red backpack, yellow parka, full of questions and trail maps. She wanted to do the East Ridge Loop and maybe camp out for a night. I remember joking, "You picked the loneliest lake in Oregon." She smiled, signed the trail log, and set off. She never signed back in. The next morning, her car was still in the lot. We called search and rescue, tracked every trail, brought in dogs, helicopters, local volunteers. Nothing, no boot prints, no gear, no struggle, not even a candy wrapper. It was like she had never existed. The locals didn't blink. Sheriff Monroe called it misadventure. Suggested she probably wandered too far and fell into the ravine. Happens sometimes, he said, especially with tourists. But it didn't happen here, not like that. And definitely not without a trace. 2 days later, I was hiking the lake's southern trail, just me, my thermos, and a heavy sense of dread when I saw something by the shoreline. At first, I thought it was a moose, broad shoulders, upright shape. I moved closer, cautiously, then I saw the uniform. Green wool, long coat, brass buttons, ranger badge dull with age. He stood still facing the lake, not moving. I called out. He turned toward me. I couldn't see his face under the brim of his old ranger's cap, but his head tilted slightly, as if curious. Then he stepped into the water, not walked toward it, into it. No splash, no sound. He simply sank beneath the surface, vanishing without a ripple. I didn't sleep that night, and around 3:30 a.m., the radio in the cabin turned on by itself. Not the digital one, the analog shortwave Dad kept on the shelf, even though no one used it anymore. The knob clicked, static flared, and through the buzz, I heard a voice. "Don't let it leave, Noah, not again." It was my father's voice, clear as day. Only problem is he died in his sleep 7 months ago. Stroke. Coroner confirmed it. And that radio, it's never been plugged in. I checked the lake again at dawn. The old man was still there floating, turning, but now it felt different. like it wasn't just floating, like it was watching. The next morning, I told myself it was a dream, stress hallucination. Maybe I'd fallen asleep without realizing, and the radio thing was just my brain processing too many horror podcasts. But when I checked the analog dial, the needle had moved. It was no longer set to 104. 1. The frequency Dad always kept it on. It was tuned to 107. Night. There was no station on that band. Just static. Except now, I wasn't so sure. By mid-morning, a fog rolled in over Black Hollow Lake, dense and sudden, like someone dropped a curtain over the shoreline. The dock disappeared into it within minutes. You couldn't see more than 10 feet ahead. I decided to head out anyway. Needed to check Trailhead 3 again. Some part of me hoped I'd find Kelsey Moran. Maybe she'd just gotten turned around and was waiting it out. People make dumb decisions in the woods all the time. But the truth, I needed to prove something was still out there. Something human, something explainable. Because otherwise, I'd have to start believing the thing I saw step into the lake wasn't a one-off. Halfway through the ridge loop, I heard it again. The voice coming through my walkie. This time, Noah. The signal was weak, crackling, like someone transmitting through miles of old cable. Don't let it walk past the tree line. I froze. My walkie wasn't on the usual Ranger channel. It had somehow switched to 107.9. The same band the old radio had been on the night before. Static followed, then silence. I checked the frequency. There's no way it should have been on 107. No, that's not even a valid emergency band. I switched it off, and that's when I noticed something even stranger. I was standing in a clearing I didn't recognize. Now, I know these woods. Even when I was a kid, I ran these trails like back roads. But this patch of forest didn't feel right. The trees were too close together. The bark was wet, even though it hadn't rained in a week. And at the center of the clearing was a stump with an old ranger hat resting on top of it. Green wool, weather-worn, still holding shape. I approached slowly, breath held. There were boot prints in the soil, deep, heavy, leading away from the stump and toward the lake, and just past the edge of the trees, where the trail should have looped toward the bluffs. There was no path, only fog. I backed out fast, double timing it to the ranger station. My boots felt heavier with every step. By the time I got back, the fog had cleared, but something else had changed. The old man of the lake was gone. It wasn't just a trick of the light. I checked from every angle. The dock, the lookout tower, even the fire trail behind the cabin. Nothing. The vertical log centuries old. My father's obsession. The thing he warned me never to let leave the lake was missing. I stood there for a long time, staring out at the water. Still flat, silent, but wrong. Like it was pretending to be calm. Like something was beneath it, holding its breath. I pulled out my dad's journal that night. The one he kept in his footlocker, wrapped in duct tape, sealed with 2 metal latches. Inside were pages of notes, weather logs, trail incidents, and things that didn't make sense. May 3 saw the man again. Same hut, same coat. Stepped into the lake. Didn't sink, he dissolved. July 12th. The log shifted 20 feet last night. Winds were calm. I didn't sleep. August 22. Got a transmission in your grandfather's voice. He died in 77. Rule 1. Don't trust the uniforms, not even your own. He'd drawn diagrams, maps of the lake with dates, points marked where disturbances had happened, photos. 2. Black and white shots of the log, taken over decades, always upright, always centered, and then, toward the back, a single envelope. Inside it, a photo from 1954. A girl, blonde, smiling, standing near the dock, scrawled in pencil on the back, Lillian Carter. Vanished. September 2nd, 1954. Same spot where Kelsey Moran disappeared. Same age, same camera angle, same expression. I sat on the cabin floor for hours, reading every page, until just after 2, the radio flared to life again. Same band, one shift, night, no static this time, just breathing. Then, it's walking now. I didn't sleep. After the radio transmission, those 4 words, it's walking now, I just sat there on the floor. my back against the door, flashlight in one hand, Dad's journal in the other. I think I was waiting for a knock. It never came, but something changed that night. Not loud, not dramatic, just this shift, like the lake stopped pretending to be still. At sunrise, I made coffee and walked the perimeter near the boat launch. I kept expecting to see the old man of the lake again. Maybe it had drifted or capsized, but the surface of Black Hollow was like glass. No log, no ripples, and just off the edge of the dock, maybe 20 feet out, I saw something rising. At first, I thought it was driftwood, then maybe a deer, but the longer I stared, the clearer it became. A figure, shoulders, a ranger's hat. It didn't float, it just stood, just beneath the surface, face tilted upward, still, as if frozen in time. I blinked, and it was gone. Back at the station, I tried calling the regional office in Eugene. The line rang twice, then disconnected. No dial tone after that. The backup sat phone didn't connect either. Dead air. It wasn't the first time the signal had gone weird out here. Satellite lag. Dead zones. But something about it felt intentional. Like the forest was pulling the wires deeper underground. By afternoon, the fog rolled back in. And so did the missing log. The old man was back in the lake. Just floating like nothing happened. Same place. Upright. Turning slightly, as if mocking me, but now there was something tied to it. I grabbed binoculars and hiked to the overlook. There, bobbing loosely on a thin rope hooked to the side of the log, was a badge. Old, tarnished, still visible under the afternoon light. Ranger issue. Unit 0427, my father's badge. That night, I found more in the journal. Pages I must have missed the first time. One was just a list. Incidents. Black Hollow Lake, 1954, Lillian Carter, 1971, Wayne Doherty, 1998, Thomas Rivera, 2002, Sarah Whitaker, 2010, Yvonne Madsen, 2023, Kelsey Morin. I stared at the fourth name, Sarah Whitaker. That was my mother's name. Dad told me she died in a car crash when I was 7. I never questioned it. But next to her name in the journal, Dad had drawn a symbol, a circle, black ink, with one sharp, vertical slash through the center like the outline of a single standing tree. Next to it, 2 words. It chose. I tore through the rest of the journal that night. I couldn't stop. According to Dad, and maybe Grandpa too, something's bound to the lake. It's ancient, or patient, or maybe both. He called it the Watcher. Sometimes just it, whatever it is. It wears faces, not perfect copies. Just enough. Enough to follow hikers. Enough to whisper on the radios. Enough to appear in your dreams and convince you to step into the lake all on your own. The old man of the lake. The log. It's not just some floating debris. It's a seal. A cap on a hole. When it drifts too far. When it sinks. The thing gets out. And when it's out, it copies. It learns. I slept with the lights on again. And around 4, 0 a.m. I woke to a sound I hadn't heard in years. 3 knocks on the cabin door. Then my father's voice. Noah, it's cold. Let me in. I didn't move, not even to breathe. But the voice kept going. Calm, familiar, close. It's me, Bud. Come on, don't be like this. You know how cold it gets out here. You remember how I used to sing that song to you when you got scared? You're not scared now, are you? Then silence. Then the radio behind me clicked on, crackling. Then, don't open the door. Son, this voice was his too. Only this one wasn't standing outside. It was coming from the speaker. I sat in that room for another hour, rifle across my lap, eyes on the doorknob. I think I fell asleep just before dawn. But right before I drifted off, I swear I heard a quiet laugh from the other side of the door. Low, dry, and very, very familiar. When the sun finally pushed over the tree line, I opened the cabin door for the first time in hours. Nothing was there. No boot prints in the frost. No voice on the wind. But something was different. The birds weren't singing. The squirrels that normally flitted around the base of the trees gone. Even the usual buzzing of insects had stopped. It was like the entire forest had paused. And I knew, without a doubt, that the thing outside the door hadn't left. It was still watching, I spent that morning walking the lake trail, trying to gather myself, pretending to do something normal, useful, but everything felt off. Twigs snapped behind me every few minutes, even though I was alone, and the wind it kept pushing against me no matter which direction I walked. It was like the forest itself was trying to steer me somewhere. It eventually did, to the old ranger outpost across the lake, a small cabin my grandfather used to use in the 60s, barely standing now, roof sagging, door half off its hinges. I'd avoided it since I got here, bad memories. It was where my dad took me the day after Mom died, sat me down, handed me a compass, and said, "If you ever hear a voice out here that sounds like mine, check your damn compass first. If it spins, it ain't me." I stepped inside. Dust, mold, a single cot with rat-chewed blankets, but under one of the floorboards loose. Splintered, I found something wrapped in waxed cloth. Another journal, older than Dad's. My grandfather's name, Howard Whitaker, scratched faintly on the first page. The entries were brief, cold, factual. 1953, log floated 6 feet northwest, full moon. Water level dropped 4 inches overnight. 1954, girl disappeared. Parents refused to file report, claimed she was chosen. She was seen walking into lake, not floating, walking. 1955, entity wore my brother's face. Came to my door at 2:11 a.m. I let him in. That was a mistake. 1956, don't speak to it. Don't look at it too long, and never let the log sink. I must have read that last line 50 times. Never let the log sink. That night, I climbed into the observation tower near the north rim. It overlooks the lake from the highest point in the park. I needed a better view, needed to see that log still floating, needed to convince myself that everything was fine. It was there, drifting slowly, but something else was. 2, a figure walk on the shoreline. Coat, hat, flashlight swinging in one hand. I used the binoculars, and when I saw his face, my heart locked up. It was me. Same coat, same limp in the left leg. Only the face was wrong, just slightly. The skin pulled a little too tight across the cheekbones. The eyes too reflective, like mirrors. It stopped walking and looked directly at me from half a mile away. I backed away from the rail, dropped the binoculars. They clattered loud against the floor. By the time I looked again, the figure was gone. But the log, it was now floating closer to shore. I hiked back to the cabin at a sprint. I locked every door, covered the windows with old ranger maps, taped the seams. Then I did something I hadn't done since the first night I got here. I turned the radio on willingly, tuned it to 107. Night. Static. Faint. Then, Noah. I almost dropped the mic. You have until the end of the month. If the log sinks, you sink with it. It's choosing now, and it remembers the bloodline. The signal died, but the implications didn't. Bloodline. It wasn't just picking strangers. It was picking us, my family. 3 generations deep. Maybe it was always trying to get out, and my family or we were the cork. The old stories. The silence. The way my dad never let me swim in the lake. He wasn't protecting me from drowning. He was protecting the lake from me. I pulled out both journals and started mapping patterns on the corkboard in the cabin dates. Names, sightings, lake movements. Every 8-10 years, the log shifts. The sightings increase. Voices return. Disappeared people show up again, but not as themselves. And in every single cycle, a Whitaker is here. Always a Whitaker. That night, just before midnight, I found the last straw. A photo tucked inside Grandpa's journal. Behind a page ripped halfway out. It was old, faded. Black hollow lake in the background. A man in uniform on the dock. And next to him a little boy. Me. But the man wasn't my father. And it wasn't my grandfather. Because that face, I didn't recognize it. But it was wearing our uniform. And in the bottom corner, scrawled in pencil, "He comes every time one of us dies." I barely slept that night. Every noise outside the cabin made me flinch. The creaking trees, the soft wind hissing against the shutters. But what kept me awake wasn't the sound. It was the silence between them, like the forest was holding its breath, like something was waiting for me to slip into sleep so it could start moving again. When I finally did nod off just for a second, I saw a dream so vivid it nearly stopped my heart. I was standing on the dock at Black Hollow Lake. The water was still, perfectly still. My father stood at the edge, staring down. He turned to me, but it wasn't his face. It was wearing his skin, but the eyes were wrong. Black, full of depthless shimmer, like someone polished obsidian until it remembered it used to be alive. It opened its mouth, and it said, "We float to remember. We sink to forget." I woke, gasping. A knock came, but not on the front door. It came from the inside wall. 3 soft knocks behind the bookshelf. I didn't move for a long time. I just listened. Then I whispered, "You're not real." And the knock stopped. The next day, I went to Dry Creek, the closest town. I needed to talk to someone. Anyone. Maybe I was going crazy. Maybe I was sleep deprived. I didn't know anymore. The general store was quiet. The clerk looked like he hadn't slept in a week. Thin, pale, twitchy. When I asked him about the old man of the lake, he froze. Didn't speak. Just rang me up for the coffee and flashlight batteries. Then whispered, "You shouldn't have gone back there." I asked him what he meant. He only said, "The Watcher remembers voices, and it likes familiar ones." Then he looked past me to the door and said, "You came alone, right?" I drove straight to the sheriff's office. Sheriff Monroe was in his late 60s, retired. Technically, but everyone still treated him like he ran the town. He'd known my grandfather. My father probably knew things I hadn't been told. His receptionist hesitated when I asked for him. "He's not here," she said, "but that's his cruiser outside," I pointed out. She didn't answer. Just walked into the back room and shut the door behind her. 10 minutes later, Monroe walked out face pale, lips thin. "We'd take her," he said. "You're stirring up old rot." I handed him the journal, my dad's, open to the list of names. Then I slid over the photo I'd found. He looked at it, jaw tightening. "This isn't new," he said. "What?" He tapped the photo. "That thing. The one that looks like your family. It's been appearing every generation. Used to wear your granddad's face. Wore your great-uncles before that. Now it's yours." He slid the photo back toward me. "It's not about the lake. Son, it's about who it can wear." I asked him why no one talked about the disappearances. The voices, the log. He looked down at his boots, then finally said, "Because if we don't talk about it, it doesn't walk far." I drove back to the station with my brain on fire. All these years, I thought my family were rangers, stewards of the land. But that wasn't it. We were wardens, guards for something buried in the deep. And now that the old man of the lake had shifted, even slightly, the thing was testing its boundaries. When I got back to the cabin, the door was open. That's when I knew I wasn't alone. I gripped my sidearm and stepped inside. Flashlight raised. No sound, no signs of entry, nothing missing. Except the journal was gone. Dad's and Grandpa's too. Both. But a single page was left on the table, one I hadn't seen before. A letter in Dad's handwriting. It said, "If you're reading this, you've seen it, felt it. It always starts with the voice, then the copy, then the dream. When it walks in your skin, it wants to replace you. Not by killing you, by making everyone else forget you were real to begin with. Your grandfather tried to drown it. I tried to trap it. You're going to have to bury it. Just remember, it can't lie, but it doesn't always tell the truth either. Don't trust the faces, especially not your own." I stood in the cabin for a long time, trying to breathe, trying to tell myself I was still me. Then I walked to the mirror and stared, and for just a second, I swear I saw my reflection blink before I did. I didn't break the mirror. I wanted to. My fingers itched to smash it, to erase whatever was standing in that glass pretending to be me. But I didn't, because some small part of me needed it there, needed to check, again and again, that I was still the one on this side of the glass. I stood in front of that mirror until the cabin window started to fog over from my breath. My legs shook, my skin felt foreign, and the face staring back, still mine. But the timing was off. A blink half a beat late, a smile too wide, a scar on the chin that I didn't remember getting. Or had I? I spent the rest of the day checking every inch of the station doors, windows, crawl spaces, no sign of forced entry, no footprints around the cabin either, and yet the journals were gone, vanished like smoke. The only thing left behind was that letter and the mirror. By late afternoon, I knew what I had to do. I had to go back to the lake, back to the old man, to see if it was still there, if the seal was broken, if the thing had truly gotten out. I geared up, heavy parka, rope, hunting knife, flare gun, and a .38 revolver from the emergency lockbox. I didn't even know if bullets would work on whatever I was dealing with, but it made me feel less powerless. I reached the north shore as the sun was dipping behind the ridge. The log was floating, still upright, still drifting in slow, lazy circles. But now, something was tethered to it, not just the badge anymore. A face-down body. I stopped dead in my tracks. The water lapped gently around the corpse. From the shore, I could make out its uniform. Ranger greens. Same patch on the shoulder. Same size. Same face. Mine. I staggered back, boots crunching on the frozen pine needles. My breath caught in my throat. It wasn't bloated or decomposing. It looked like I had just drowned. Like someone had stripped the life out of me, dressed the husk, and floated it out to sea for show. It bobbed once, twice, then turned its head. Water poured from its mouth, and its eyes opened. I ran all the way back to the station, lungs burning. Chest tight! I slammed the door, locked every bolt, nailed a board across the entry just for good measure, and still, I didn't feel safe, because I finally understood what my dad meant. It doesn't just mimic, it erases, replaces. I didn't sleep, just sat at the kitchen table, flipping through old ranger files, station maps, maintenance logs, anything to distract myself from the sound of my own voice whispering from the tree line outside. At 3:11 a.m., the radio clicked on. You've seen it now. My voice, but hollow, off, like it came from someone who had read every word I'd ever said and could only approximate my soul. You left the lake unguarded. It thanks you for your service. Then laughter, dry, mocking, too close. When I opened the back door with my revolver raised, there was nothing there, only the wind. And on the porch, laid gently like an offering, was the mirror from the cabin wall. Except now, the reflection in the glass wasn't mine. It was wearing my face, yes, but it was dressed in my grandfather's uniform. And in the reflection, behind me, I saw a second figure, a man in a park ranger uniform, wearing my father's face, standing just out of frame, smiling. I dropped the mirror. It shattered on the porch, and the laughing stopped, just like that. The wind died. The forest fell silent again. I waited. Nothing. The next morning, I called the Ranger HQ again. This time, the line connected. A young guy named Brandon picked up, said he was covering dispatch. When I asked about the old man of the lake, he got quiet, then said, "Yeah, we've been getting reports. Log disappearing, reappearing. People claiming they saw their siblings or friends at the park, even if they had been dead for years. Some folks say the lake's haunted. Others say it's worse than that. You okay out there, Ranger Whitaker?" I didn't answer. He paused, then added, "Just be careful who you let in. We had a guy last year. Started talking to someone who looked just like him. 2 weeks later, we found his boots on the dock. That's all we found." I hung up, and I knew, right then, what I had to do next. I had to find the bottom of that lake, and make sure the thing never walks in my skin again. There's something deeply unnatural about preparing to dive into a lake that's trying to wear your face. But I couldn't wait anymore. I had to go down there. I had to see what was beneath it, what the old man of the lake was keeping sealed. If there was any chance to stop this thing, I knew the answer was under the surface. I spent the morning prepping what little dive gear we had. The dry suit was barely functional, probably left over from the 90s. I checked the seals, replaced the cracked mouthpiece, and refilled the oxygen tanks. I packed a waterproof flashlight, the flare gun, and a GoPro that somehow still held a charge. Then I wrote a letter and pinned it to the kitchen corkboard. "If you find this, and I'm not me, don't believe anything I say. Burn this cabin, burn the lake. Don't let it leave this place. And rush. I didn't know if anyone would ever read it, but I needed to leave something behind that sounded like me, just in case I came back wrong. By noon, I was at the shoreline, staring into the lake. The water looked calm, almost tranquil, but underneath, I knew it was watching. The log floated just 50 yards out, spinning slowly. It reminded me of a sentry at a prison gate, and I finally understood it wasn't drifting. It was patrolling, a barrier, a warning. I stepped into the water, feeling the cold bite through the suit like needles. The weight of the gear dragged me down, but I didn't resist. I swam toward the log, keeping my eyes locked on it. As I reached it, I placed one gloved hand on the bark. It was cold, slick, vibrating, like something was humming through it from below. Then I turned on the flashlight, pulled in a breath, and dove. The water was black within 10 feet. Light died fast. I kept descending, letting the weight pull me. Silt floated in my beam like ash. There were no fish, no plants, just darkness and cold and pressure. At 30 feet, the GoPro clicked on automatically. I don't know why. I didn't press it. At 40, the rope I tied to my waist began to pull taut, and then the lake changed. The pressure on my chest increased, not from depth, but like something was pushing back. My ears rang, my teeth throbbed, and in the beam of my flashlight I saw the hole. A perfect circle in the lake bed, black as oil, edged with rocks arranged in a ring. At its center, a cavity large enough to swallow a manhole, and inside, something moved. It was not human. It had limbs, too many. They writhed like kelp in a current that didn't exist. At its center was a pale, flat face, smooth, no eyes, no mouth, but I could feel it looking at me, through the water, through the light, through me, and then my flashlight went out. Panic took over. I kicked, twisted, tried to reorient myself, but the rope around my waist pulled hard, jerking me downward. Then a whisper filled my mask, not through water, but inside my skull. You see me now. You've seen what they hid, so who do you think you are? The pressure on my chest grew unbearable. My lungs screamed, the mask cracked, and just before I blacked out, I fired the flare gun upward. The light broke through the water like fire through velvet, and for just a moment, I saw them. Dozens of faces in the silt, all of them mine, all of them smiling. I don't remember getting out. When I woke, I was on the dock, shivering, half frozen. The flare gun was gone, the dive gear in tatters, but the GoPro, it was in my lap, still recording. I watched it that night, every second, up to the point the flashlight died, and in the last 3 seconds of footage before static was a reflection on the lens, not of the creature over me, but not the me holding the camera. The other one, smiling, upside down. I couldn't sleep after watching the footage. Every time I blinked, I saw my own face upside down, half submerged in dark water, grinning like it knew something I didn't. The creature in the lake didn't just mimic, it collected. Each face was like a mask, and I was just the next one added to the set. My skin still felt like it didn't belong to me. My joints cracked in strange ways. My reflection didn't flinch when I did. Something had changed in the water. Something had changed in me. I needed help. I drove into Dry Creek again, trying not to panic every time I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. My eyes didn't seem the same color. They were a little lighter, or maybe just emptier. The sheriff's office was closed. The grocery store was boarded up. The main street, deserted. Even the gas station pumps had plastic bags over the handles. It was like the whole town had evacuated without telling anyone, and I wasn't entirely sure if they were running from something or from me. I walked into the library. It was the only place still unlocked. Old building, dusty shelves, no lights, but someone was inside. A woman mid-30s, heavy sweater, thick glasses, sitting at a back table with a stack of newspapers. When she saw me, she didn't smile. She didn't flinch either. She just stared. "You're him," she said. I froze. "I'm who?" She pointed to a yellowed newspaper clipping beside her. "Park Ranger Noah Whittaker found dead in Black Hollow Lake, body unrecovered." I stared at the headline. The date was from last week. My throat closed. I shook my head. That's not possible. It's not the first time, she said quietly. I leaned in. You know about the Watcher? I've seen it, she whispered. My brother worked search and rescue out here 10 years ago. Said he pulled a drowning victim from the lake, someone who looked exactly like his best friend. The guy had died a month earlier. Same clothes, same scars, same voice. She pushed another paper toward me. Ranger Michael Reed, presumed dead. Sighted 2 years later. Same uniform, same station, same smile. She said the lake takes people, not all at once. Sometimes just a voice, sometimes a memory. But eventually, it takes the face. And once that happens, there's no telling who you're talking to anymore. I'm still me, I said. She didn't respond, just slid a mirror across the table. I hesitated, then looked. My face stared back, but there was no breath on the glass, no fog, nothing. You sure? She asked. And that's when the lights cut out. A loud bang echoed from the front of the library, then silence until we heard it. A voice from the dark hallway, calling, Noah, hey, you okay in there? My blood turned to ice, because it was my voice, exactly my voice. The woman grabbed my arm. Don't answer, she whispered. Whatever you do, don't answer it. But the voice kept getting closer. You left your bag at the station. Thought I'd bring it for you. I reached for my sidearm. The woman shook her head violently. No, if you acknowledge it, it learns. It becomes you faster. Footsteps creaked into the reading room. I aimed toward the sound. Another me stepped out from behind the shelves. Same jacket, same boots, only he was smiling. Too much, like he didn't understand how to stop. The eyes weren't quite right, either. They reflected the light before it hit them, like headlights on a deer. You don't have to fight it, the double said. Just let go. It's easier that way. I raised the gun. My hands were trembling. I'm not you, I said. He grinned wider. No, he replied, but I will be. The woman hurled the mirror at it. It shattered across his face, and he let out a sound I will never forget. Not a scream, not a growl. It was like something choking on light. The double convulsed, melted, collapsed, and in the broken glass, I saw it again. That thing, no face, just layers of flesh, learning shape like it was studying a mask. Then it was gone. The woman turned to me, breathing hard. Next time, she said, it won't just send a copy, it'll send you. We left the library just before dawn. Neither of us spoke much. The woman, her name was Marla Green, had a house at the edge of Dry Creek, up on a wooded bluff with a view of the lake. A narrow trail wound down behind her cabin straight to the waterline. She said she avoided the lake whenever possible. Said some things were easier to survive if you never went near them again. But she stayed. Why? Because she kept records, clippings, journals, testimonies. I asked her why she hadn't left like everyone else. She just said, someone has to remember, because when it replaces someone, the world forgets they ever existed. Her house was packed with boxes of files and photos, old ranger reports, unsolved disappearances, historical anomalies, people who had lived in Dry Creek for decades, then were suddenly gone from every document. No birth certificate, no property deed, just erased. And the worst part, some of them were her family. 3 brothers, she said, gone before I turned 10. One fell into the lake. One went looking for him. One came back wrong. She handed me a Polaroid. 2 boys, smiling. A third, standing behind them, turned slightly away. He used to sleep in the garage, she said. Used to hum my mom's lullaby even after she died. She paused. Then one night I woke up and he was sitting at the foot of my bed. Said he was the last one now. Next morning, no one remembered them but me. Marla believed the Watcher wasn't a ghost or a creature. It was a memory parasite, a shapeshifter that fed on identity. And the old man of the lake wasn't just keeping it trapped, it was anchoring the world's memories to reality. If that log sinks, if it's removed, or rots, or splits, it loses its tether, she said, and then the Watcher can roam. I asked her if there was a way to destroy it. Her face darkened. There was a man in 1969, she said, veteran, came back from Vietnam, took a ranger job here, Name was Jonas Hale. She opened a file. Inside, weathered pages, hand-drawn symbols, a map of the lake with red X's. He said he'd seen something like it in Cambodia. Said the locals called it the borrower of skins. Told him if you bury the reflection deep enough, it forgets who it was trying to become. Jonas had tried to trap it in the lake bed using mirrors, stakes, and blood. It worked for 2 weeks, then he went missing. Next month, his wife reported seeing him standing waist deep in the lake, humming a song she didn't recognize. I think that's the key, Marla said. We have to make it forget. Erase the copy before it replaces the real. We sat in silence for a while, both of us staring out at the lake through her window. The surface looked calm again, but we knew it was watching. Marla handed me a heavy box wrapped in canvas. Inside were mirrors, dozens of hand-sized silver-backed mirrors, some cracked, some etched with strange symbols, some stained with what looked like dried blood. I saved them from Jonas's shed before the feds burned it down. She gave me a faint smile. You're the only one it hasn't taken yet, not fully. If you're going to bury your reflection, you'll need these. That night, I returned to the ranger station. Everything was as I left it, except the mirror on the bathroom door was back, unbroken, clean, and taped to it was a single note, written in my handwriting. We traded places a long time ago. You just didn't notice. I stepped closer, heart pounding. In the mirror, my face looked back. Same jacket, same tired eyes. But when I raised my left hand, the reflection raised its right. Perfectly synced, no lag, but wrong. Because I was no longer sure which side of the glass I belonged on. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed seated in front of the mirror, watching it, watching him. Every twitch, every blink, every micro expression, trying to see if I was still in control, or if something had already crossed through and was wearing me like a borrowed jacket. But the longer I watched, the more the thought crept in. What if I'm the one on the wrong side? What if the thing pretending to be me out there, breathing the air, walking around, wasn't pretending at all? What if I was the copy and the real me never made it out of that lake? By dawn, my eyes were bloodshot, my skin felt too tight. I'd stopped trusting the mirror, so I covered it with a towel. Then I smashed it anyway. That's when I heard the voice again. Not from the hallway this time, not from outside the cabin, but from inside my own head. You're getting close. Closer than your father ever did, but he still screams down here. Would you like to hear him? I slammed my fists against the counter, trying to shake it out. It didn't help. I had to finish this. Whatever was leaking out of that lake, and whatever was wearing my name, I had to cut it off before it reached the rest of the world. Marla had given me the tools. The ritual mirrors, the etched symbols, the journal with Jonas Hale's notes. All I needed was a plan, and the courage to go back. At noon, I met Marla down by the shore. We brought a small aluminum rowboat with us, lightweight but sturdy. In the bow, we packed a box of mirrors, coils of rope, a weighted tarp, and the flare gun. Marla laid out the mirrors like wards, 5 in total, arranged around the base of the boat so they reflected inward toward the center. At the center, I sat. I had to be the bait. She would stay on shore with the radio and the flare. If I didn't check in every 10 minutes, she'd light the flare and run, not call for help, just run. That was the deal. The water was like ink today, flat, still, reflective enough to see my face clearly and the ripples. Only when I looked down, it wasn't my face. Not quite. It smiled when I didn't. It blinked slower than I ever would. It knew I was watching. I paddled out. The lake was silent. No birds, no wind, no bugs. Just water and sky and the creak of the boat. When I reached the old man, the log was floating vertically again. But it had drifted far from its usual patrol route. That was a bad sign. The tether was weakening. I circled the log once, dragging the weighted tarp behind me like a net. Then I leaned over the side and whispered, I know what you are. I know what you've done. And I know how to stop you. For a moment, there was nothing. Then the lake opened, like a throat, like it inhaled. The water beneath the boat went glassy, and a hole yawned open straight down into the black. My ears popped. The air grew colder, and something rose. Not a shape, not yet, but a sensation. A presence, as though someone just entered the room behind you and is smiling. The water around the boat began to ripple in spirals. The mirrors trembled one by one. They began to fog, then crack, then shatter inward. All at once, I grabbed the flare gun, pointed it into the water. That's when it breached. It didn't look like a monster. It looked like me, sopping wet, pale-eyed, mouth twitching. But it wasn't my current self. It was me as a child, maybe 9 years old. It clung to the side of the boat with small hands, stared at me with eyes that didn't blink. Then it said, "You forgot the rules, and now there's no one left to remember you." I froze, because those words, that voice, they were my father's. It began pulling itself into the boat. Its fingers were too long, its knees bent the wrong way, its face stretched like wax melting under heat. I struck it with the oar, once, twice, but it didn't scream. It laughed, a bubbling, broken laugh that gurgled like water trapped in lungs. I reached down, grabbed the weighted tarp, and pulled hard, snaring both the creature and the log. Then I jumped. The boat capsized behind me. The lake swallowed everything. I swam hard. I could feel it reaching after me, scraping at my legs, humming my father's song just beneath the surface. I didn't look back. Marla pulled me from the water near shore. The flare gun was gone, the mirrors gone, the boat gone, but the log was back, floating upright, patrolling, and the whispers had stopped. For now, 2 days passed. The log still floated upright, no whispers, no voices, but I couldn't convince myself it was over. Marla stayed silent most of the time. She spent her hours organizing the files in her little archive, trying to salvage what she could before her words the erasure begins again. Because that's the thing with the Watcher. It doesn't feed like a predator. It feeds like time. It waits. Then it rewrites. And once it begins again, even names don't survive. I drove into Dry Creek again to look for answers. The main road had no signs. Literally no street signs. The population sign was blank. The diner had no name painted on the door anymore. It felt like the entire town was becoming a placeholder. Like someone hit backspace and never typed anything back in. When I stopped at the gas station, the attendant stared at me blankly. I asked him his name. He blinked twice, then said, "I don't think I have one anymore." I called dispatch that night, just to see. A voice picked up on the other end, but it wasn't anyone I recognized. Not Sarah, not Henry, just static, and a voice I swear sounded almost like mine. "Ranger Station. Dreholo. This is Officer Whitaker speaking." I nearly dropped the phone. "My name is Noah Whitaker." Pause. Then, "That's not possible. I'm looking right at his file. Says he drowned last month. No body recovered. Are you trying to impersonate an officer?" "Sir." I hung up. That night, I had the dream again, but this time, I wasn't in the water. I was above the lake, floating, watching a version of myself row across the surface. Below him, shadows moved. They had faces, so many faces. Mean, Marla's, my father's, strangers I've never seen before. They were all screaming, but no sound came out. And above it all, the old man of the lake spun slowly, like a second hand on a clock. Each rotation brought the shadows closer. I woke in a cold sweat. My notebook was open on my chest, and written inside, in handwriting I didn't recognize, "Burn the tether, bury the lake, or you will be the next thing it learns." I went to Marla's the next morning, told her what I saw. She looked tired, pale, like something had been whispering to her all night too. "I think it's trying again," she said. "It's subtle this time. Not voices or doubles, just forgetting. Quiet erasure." She pointed to a picture frame on the mantel. It held a photo of her and a man I'd never seen. "He was my husband," she said. "He left me a year ago." I nodded. "What was his name?" She stared at the photo, blinking, then said, "I don't know. We made a plan. A final one." Marla had found records of a second tether, another floating log mentioned in ranger journals from 1912. It was supposed to be submerged during a landslide in the north basin of the lake. If the old man tethered the entity above, maybe the second one tethered it below. And if both were severed, we didn't know what would happen. But it might be the only way to trap it permanently or destroy it. That night, We returned to the lake. 2 boats, 2 people, 2 flares. If one of us didn't return, the other would light the signal and leave the valley for good. Marla rode north, where the second tether supposedly rested beneath 60 feet of water. I stayed with the old man, waiting, watching. As midnight passed, the water started humming. Not loud, just enough to make your bones ache. The log spun faster, then stopped and tilted downward like it was being pulled. My radio crackled. It was Marla. I found it. There's something tied to it, like a body. No, not a body, more like a shell. It's got a face. My face. Oh God. It's got your face too. Then static. Then silence. I screamed into the radio. Nothing. And across the lake, I saw it again. A second boat heading toward me. Slow, rhythmic, unnatural. I lifted the flare gun, aimed it straight at the water. Then I heard Marla's voice behind me. Don't fire. It's me. I turned. She was standing in my boat, dripping wet, smiling too wide. I didn't lower the flare gun. I couldn't, because the woman standing in my boat, soaking wet, smiling too wide, breathing without sound, wasn't Marla. Not anymore. She looked like her, moved like her, even had the tremble in her left hand, the one she got from a car accident in 2006. But her eyes were still, too still, like glass marbles with a soul painted on. You don't have to do this, she said softly. I'm still me. Let me prove it to you. She reached out her hand, but something in her voice was wrong. Perfect, but wrong. Like someone reciting a song they had never heard. I just talked to you on the radio, I said, stepping back. You said you found the second tether, that it had faces. Her smile wavered, just for a second. Then she tilted her head and said, almost playfully, you must have heard an echo. I raised the flare gun. I want to talk to the real Marla. She stopped moving. Her shoulders twitched once. Then she grinned, wide and sharp and hollow. You already are? She lunged. I fired. The flare hit her center mass and exploded in a bloom of red and white fire. She didn't scream. She just kept laughing, even as her skin blistered, even as her jaw unhinged and her voice twisted into static. Then she fell, not into the water, but through it, like she was made of mist. I spun the boat around and rowed hard for the northern basin. The air had shifted thicker, darker, humming louder now. The watcher was fully awake, and it was done playing games. I reached the second site just before sunrise. The surface of the lake boiled with movement. Faces pushed against it like pressed hands on plastic wrap. Some I recognized my father. Old hikers, lost rangers. One looked just like me, floating at the surface. Watching, waiting. Marla's boat was overturned nearby. The water beneath it was black and deep. I dove in. It was like falling into syrup. Heavy, suffocating. But I followed the rope she had tied to her waist. It snaked downward into the dark. 20 feet, 30. Then I saw it. The second tether. It was another log but warped. Knotted, carved with unfamiliar symbols. It pulsed like a heartbeat. Wrapped around it were dozens of skin-like veils. Faces stretched across them. Eyes closed. Mouths half-formed. And in the center, Marla. Alive. Barely. Her arms were tangled in vine-like strands, pulling her into the tether like it was absorbing her. She saw me and shook her head violently. A bubble escaped her mouth. She pointed to the surface. Go. Go now. But I grabbed her instead and pulled. The tether fought back. It felt like every forgotten name in the valley was screaming into my skull. Dates, voices, memories not my own, all trying to replace mine. I thought I saw my mother's face, then a teacher from grade school, then my own face again. Older, toothless, smiling with nothing behind the eyes. But I kept pulling until her arm broke free. Then the other, we kicked. Upward, through the black, toward the light. We breached the surface, gasping, coughing, screaming. The lake roared behind us, not with water, but with sound. An avalanche of voices. Angry, hungry, dying. Then silence, and the tether sank. We lay on the shore for hours. Neither of us spoke. When we finally looked up, the old man of the lake was floating again. Still, upright, centered, and the faces were gone. We didn't speak much after that. Marla was pale, lips cracked, eyes sunken like she hadn't slept in years, even though it had only been a few days since we first met. She held my hand for a long time, like she needed the contact to stay grounded. I wasn't sure if it was to remind herself that I was real, or that she was. We sat on the dock that night and watched the old man of the lake drift in slow, perfect circles again. It was back in place. The second tether was gone, pulled down so deep it would take an act of God or another idiot like me to disturb it again. But I didn't feel relief, only dread, because something had changed. The next morning, I went to town to check in with dispatch. Sarah didn't recognize me. She smiled politely and said, "Can I help you, sir?" When I walked in wearing my ranger uniform and badge, I thought she was joking. I laughed. "Very funny, Sarah." She froze. "How do you know my name?" "Because we've worked together for the past 3 years." She stood slowly, backing away. "I don't know who you are, but I need you to leave." I checked my personnel file. It was gone, not just missing, erased, like it had never existed. There was a file for my father, sure, but nothing about me. No hiring forms, no medical records, no shift logs, not even a locker. Someone else's name was now etched into the plate on mine. Back at the ranger station, I checked the logbooks. Every patrol I'd written, every journal entry, every shift note, they were still in my handwriting. But the name signed at the bottom, Daniel Whitaker. That was my uncle. He died in 1987. I ran my fingers over the pages, feeling their weight, their truth. This was my life, my handwriting. But now it belonged to someone else. I looked in the mirror above the sink, and for the first time, I didn't recognize the man looking back. I drove to my childhood home in Ashfield. The neighbors had changed. The yard was smaller. There was a different name on the mailbox M. Haley. I knocked on the door. A man answered, mid-60s, kind eyes. "Yes, is this the Whitaker place?" He shook his head. "No, my family's been here since 1972, but my father, Noah Whitaker Sr., he built this place." He gave me a sad smile. "I'm sorry. I've lived here all my life. No Whitakers ever owned this house." He shut the door gently, back at Marla's. She was waiting for me on the porch, eyes red, hands trembling. "I went to the cemetery," she said. "To my parents' graves." I nodded, bracing for it. "They're still there. But my name isn't on the headstone. Neither is my brother's. It just says, Children Unknown." The Watcher wasn't trying to kill us. It was rewriting us, erasing us from the world in pieces, not with claws, but with absence. We sat in silence again, for hours, until Marla spoke, barely above a whisper. "If we're already disappearing, why are we still here?" That hit me like a gut punch. If the world had already forgotten us, if our lives were being overwritten, what were we? Ghosts, remnants, or just living people carrying memories no one else wanted? That night, I made a decision. If I was fading, if my name was already gone, I had one thing left I could do. One thing the Watcher couldn't erase. I picked up a pen and opened my father's old leather journal, the one he used when the voices started for him. I flipped to the last blank page, and I began to write. "My name is Noah Whitaker. I was a ranger at Black Hollow Lake. This is what I remember." I wrote until my hand cramped. My name, my father's name, the date I took the ranger job, the day I met Marla, the first time I heard the Watcher's voice, the night I saw my reflection blink out of sync. Every detail I could remember, I poured it into that journal like it was the last record of my soul. Because maybe it was. Marla did the same. She sat across the cabin at her kitchen table, writing in an old spiral-bound notebook with a floral cover. We didn't speak. Only the scratching of pens filled the space between us. She had a map open, 2 marking places, drawing circles around disappearances, one she lingered on for a long time. Emily Stevens, 1954. She tapped it twice with her pencil and whispered, "She's still out there." That night, I had another dream, but it wasn't a nightmare. Not exactly. I was walking the shoreline at dawn, barefoot, and the fog was thick. Out on the water, I could see the old man of the lake drifting in slow circles again. But this time, the lake wasn't black. It was crystal clear. beneath the surface, I saw everyone. Every missing hiker, every forgotten name. They weren't screaming. They were waiting, watching me, and in the center of them all, a child's hand reached up from the depths and pressed against the underside of the water's surface. My hand? I woke up with tears in my eyes. Not fear, grief. I needed to leave something behind, something the watcher couldn't erase. So I did the unthinkable. I called a journalist I trusted, Marcus Vane, a guy from college who now worked for a small-town publication that covered fringe reports, cryptids, UFOs, lake monsters. Most people thought it was satire. That's what I was counting on. Because if you tell the truth dressed as a joke, the watcher ignores it. It only erases things people take seriously. Marcus answered on the second ring. Vane speaking. It's me, Noah. A pause. Who? My chest tightened. Noah Whitaker. We did a podcast interview back in 2018 about wildfire response. You crashed on my couch after the Smoky Hill fire. A long silence. Then, carefully, I don't remember you, man, but my email says you sent me a file. He clicked something. Then, Jesus Christ, is this real? Yes. Is this you? Yes. He exhaled. Hard. This is the creepiest file I've ever seen. I'm going to publish it, even if no one believes it. I thanked him and hung up. And for the first time in days, I felt something like hope, because even if the world forgot my face, maybe my words would survive. That night, Marla made a fire in the old stone pit behind her house. She burned every mirror in her cabin, every photo of herself, every trace the watcher might use to remake her again. Then she handed me a penknife and pointed to my forearm. Write your name, she said. Skin remembers longer than paper, so I carved it in shallow, careful strokes. Noah Whitaker. The blood didn't matter, only the permanence, only the pain of holding on. We stayed up until dawn. The log was still floating, the voices were still gone. But Dry Creek was fading, fewer people on the streets, more buildings boarded up, streetlights flickering like forgotten memories. And yet, we remained, for now. It's been 7 days since I carved my name into my arm. The wound hasn't healed. Marla says that's good. Says the watcher can't take what bleeds. I don't know if that's true, but I hold on to it like a lifeline, because every morning now, I forget something small. A birthday, a trail name, my father's favorite sandwich. They vanish like mist burned off by the sun. 2 more rangers have disappeared, not taken, just gone. Their names replaced in the logbooks by entries marked Ranger 3 and unassigned. Their patrol routes are empty, and their cabins are dark, but the lights inside still flicker sometimes. And someone or something still calls in on their radios. Marla's memory is going faster than mine. Yesterday she asked me who I was. Today she didn't ask at all. She just looked through me, then whispered, "You should leave before it finds your center." I didn't ask what that meant. I don't think I want to know. I hiked out to the overlook today one last time. Black Hollow Lake stretched below me like a coin of obsidian. Perfect, unmoving. At the center, the old man drifted slowly, as always. But something was different. The ripples didn't move outward anymore. They moved inward, toward the log, like the lake was inhaling. Preparing. I opened the journal one last time and wrote down everything again, even though I knew the pages might vanish by morning. Then I tucked it under the old roots at the overlook, buried it in a tin box wrapped in plastic. If someone ever finds this, let it be known. The Watcher is real. It lives in the lake. It wears our names, and it waits for us to forget who we are. I walked back to the cabin in silence. Marla was gone. The door was open. Her boots were still inside. Her coat, too, but her notebook was missing. The fire was still warm. She didn't leave a note. Just 3 words carved into the table. It remembers me. I don't know what to do now. I could try to run, but my car won't start anymore. My badge has no name. The town no longer shows up on maps. Even the air feels thinner, like I'm breathing in less reality every hour. So I sit here in the ranger station, writing, because writing is all I have left. And maybe if someone somewhere reads this, maybe I won't vanish completely. If you're reading this now, and you're near Black Hollow Lake, do not approach the water. Do not look at your reflection after midnight. Do not speak your full name out loud. And if you see the old man of the lake drifting toward the shore, run, because the watcher is patient and it's almost free.